the meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Were they submitted? I don't recall
I don't
seeing
think I
them.
saw them.
I don't think I saw them.
So we'll pass on that. Mark, you want to take us through the invoices?
Absolutely. Item 2, review and approve invoices. Invoice number 1, Turner Townsend Hearing Basic Services in the amount of $8,913. Is there a warrant? Do you have a copy of the warrant we can pull up, or?
You want me to pull up the warrant?
I just want to, I mean, if we usually vote on the totals, I don't have it totaled. I can total it up.
They're on the agenda. I can share the agenda.
Yeah, no, I have the agenda, but I'll total it as we go along. So Turner Townsend Hearing Basic Services, $8,913. Studio G Basic Services, $45,000. Studio G Additional Services, $39,555, for a total of $93,468 for April.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the invoices? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Michelle?
Michelle Kane, yes.
Sean?
Sean Ahern, yes.
Steve?
Stephen Udi, yes.
Bob?
Bob Romley, yes.
Mike?
Mike Scaduto, yes.
And Steve Moore, yes. Motion carries. Okay, next item of business is Studio G. Reviewing the schematic design update and the pre-town meeting presentation. So who's going to take that? Is that going to be Marilee?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Marilee.
So we are expecting the estimates to come in tomorrow. Then next week we will be meeting with TTH because they also have an estimate coming in, and we will be doing reconciliation. And then once we have landed on a number, then we will be sharing that with all of you. So in
Marilee,
the meantime,
excuse me, who's the other estimate from? PMA?
PMC.
Yeah.
PMA?
PMC and TTH.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So in the meantime, we are putting together a potential value engineering list, and we are looking at anything we can possibly think of that could make a dent in whatever the final cost comes in at. We are also ranking these in terms of least painful to most painful. We have reviewed a decent number of these already with the working group, and for the most part, they agreed with our initial ideas in terms of what could potentially be cut, as well as the level of pain, so to speak. So this is just a little sneak peek of some of the things on the list. The ones that are green are put at priority 0 or 1. This is the pain level. So pain level 0 means we should probably just go ahead and do it because it's not going to affect really any of the educational delivery or anything that we've spoken about to date in terms of what is important for the project. 1 is stuff that would be very easy to cut and nobody would ever know the difference after the fact once we're in the building. Level 3 is the most painful cuts, and that is the type of things that would, if we come down to having to make a cut like this versus having no project at all, that's sort of the level of intensity that these cuts are. And then level 2 is sort of in between, something that we would consider, but it needs further study to really make a decision on it. I've added a column here for cost. So we're going to get numbers from the estimators about the impact of each one of these, and that will help us to make some of these decisions. Like, for example, if we have a level 2, we're not really sure if we should take the cut or not, but then we see that it's not really going to save us a ton of money, then that could help us decide to maybe not take that cut. Or if we have a level 3 that seems, you know, like a pretty painful cut, but it would save a massive amount of money, then we could be more likely to take that cut. So we're trying to be a little proactive with finding ways to save money. I think a lot of these we should just go ahead and take anyhow, regardless of where the estimate comes in. And we'll be sharing this list with you, also working with TTH and the working group as well to brainstorm more things to add to this list. And I'll just kind of scroll down a little bit so you can just look at some of these, see what sort of things we're talking about.
Hey, Marilee, would it be helpful to have 3 columns for cost, one for level 1 or 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, so we know what the totals for each of the pain levels are?
Yeah, definitely. I could total them up at the bottom. That's a great idea.
I want to thank Marilee for working on this yesterday with us. It was really good to see that we are, we can make those cuts and help out the community if we need to, and just preparing for that. So thanks, Marilee, for compiling this list and asking us for our insight in the working group yesterday.
Sorry, my kid's here. Yes, Mark, you have a question.
I was just going to add to that, Marilee, that the cost estimates, our cost estimate will be in tomorrow as well. We're going to review them and do a reconciliation. But I had mentioned to the group earlier in the week about establishing a strategic cost sort of subcommittee group to review these numbers. And Steve Moore, you had said, a suggestion of the people that'll be on it. So we'd like to pull that together sooner than later. So next week we can talk to you about it as well. We're looking at a potential meeting. I think it was on June 9th, a joint meeting with the finance board, the select board, et cetera, for us to start talking about these numbers. So seeing that we're, as a group, only meeting once a month, it would be good in between if we could work with this group to have this discussion. So I believe it was recommended Steve Moore, Kelly, Steve Venuti, Mike Scaduto, I think were the 4. Am I missing somebody? I think that's everybody.
I think that was it.
Yeah, so those are the 4 people we'd like to be able. This is not a public meeting. This is a kind of a working group that's going to focus on the numbers. So we'll look at getting the schedule together for next week after we get a chance to look at the numbers and talk about potential reconciliation, seeing how the numbers come back. But we will certainly get you involved so we can work on getting on the same page for the 9th. Then I believe there's another meeting on the 11th. And then the next building committee meeting is not till the 18th of June. So we'll pull those numbers together and work with this group. And on top of this great beginnings of a potentially value management, value engineering list of things that may, have to come out of the project depending on the cost. So that's a good start all around.
I do want to point out that there are very few of these things that would affect the academic program. We have those things down here at the bottom. Primarily, it would be removing the adaptive PE from the project. And the only reason we would really consider that move is because now there's a much larger gym that could potentially accommodate those activities. And also there is an OTPT room, which could also take on some of that role. So really trying hard to protect the district's educational program and educational requirements with the CE list.
Marilee, on this list, is it possible to add yet another column if it's reimbursable and non-reimbursable? That could make a difference in deciding between a 1 and a 3.
That's a great idea.
Yep.
Great idea. Jim, I saw an agenda for FinCom for next week. On the 27th, next Tuesday, they have an agenda item to discuss Shaker Lane School Building Project cost estimate.
Right.
No.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Jim, I can answer that. That was merely to inform the FinCom about the meeting that we're going to have on the 9th. That's all it really was. And just to give a quick overview of where we are in the project. So there's no details or anything on the 27th.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yep.
I apologize. I did leave somebody off the committee that would like to be part of the cost group, and that is Mr. Duggan. Jim,
Right.
sorry I left you out there. That would be the round up the group, and we'll send the schedule out to everybody and get it to work for everybody's time.
Yeah, that gives us an odd number.
Yeah, it gives us an odd number, but it gives everybody from good factions from every group, and I think that'll work out well. So thank you.
All right. Then any questions on this BE list before I move to the next piece? Okay. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is talking about what happened at the meeting before the last town meeting. I think a few of us have already spoken about it, and now we've moved on to actions that we can take. We are investigating more about getting accurate cost information to compare what happens if we don't get a new school, what happens if we do certain code upgrades, do we have to do the code upgrades, what's required. We had a meeting earlier this week that included the Littleton building inspector and the chief of police to talk about what sorts of things that they would require. They both said that they would basically follow the code. In some towns, you get people who say, I want to follow the code, but also I have these other requirements, which makes it a little bit tough to predict what those things are going to be. So it's good that they are predictable and saying they'll follow the code, because we can look that up and know what that's going to be. We met with our code consultant to ask him about getting a more elaborate code report. We talked about different scenarios in terms of what, if you do one thing, what is it going to trigger? For example, if you install fire sprinklers, what other work does that trigger? What are the sort of the thresholds of, if you spend this amount of money, then all of a sudden it triggers a whole bunch of extra work that you have to do. And we've asked him to give us a proposal for, he's really great because he's not going to make you pay for stuff that you don't need, right? So he basically said he would do a several page document explaining just the process and what these triggers are, what these thresholds are. And then we would use that information to come up with these scenarios, give him these scenarios, and then he would give us a little bit more detail. So we have a very clear roadmap as to what could happen. So
who is he?
I'm sorry?
Who is he?
Bob Caracity. He's our code consultant who's been working on all of the reports so far.
Okay.
So it's great he's already familiar with the project. That helps as well. And an early number he gave is this might be in the $2,000 to $3,000 range. So, Mark, I'm not sure how much, if any, money is left, but it's less than I was expecting. So it's good news. You're muted.
Mark, you're muted.
You're still muted.
Mark, you're muted.
My apologies. That's the first ever. I'm hard to mute. Yes, we'll look at the budget in a little bit to show exactly what we have. We may, if it only ends up honestly being less than $5,000, I believe we have around $10,000 or $12,000 left in the project. It looks like we're done with any, other services that are needed, so we may be able to work that out. But also, I mean, if it's an agreement that everybody wants to do this prior to the vote, so we understand what we may be getting into, then that's certainly something we can be directed to do. And it looks like we may have funding to support that.
I think it would probably be helpful for us to have that information. If you were to proceed with that, I'd want to do it on a time basis, not a lump sum basis.
Sure.
Yep.
And also, do we know what the assessed value of the building is, so we know what that trip point is?
Yeah.
What is the assessed value? It's got to be low.
It is low. Steve Venuti has the number, but the threshold, like the 30% of it or so, is around $2.7 million. So very low.
Yeah.
Like 8.7 million, I think it was, something like that, assessed value.
I'm looking.
I know when we looked at town hall, the assessed value is pretty low.
Yeah.
There it is. 2.6 mil,
Is the 30%. What's the assessed value of the building?
8,275,000.
There is 8.2.
Okay. So, sorry, Mary Lee, go ahead.
That was it for me, unless anybody else wanted to say anything about that pre-town meeting. Mark.
Yes, I just wanted to add, we heard a little bit at the meeting. I thought the meeting went very well. Wasn't as well attended as we thought, but I think we got the information out there. We had a lot of Q&A about the cost, which was expected. But we have been hearing not only from them, but from other people, that there doesn't seem to be enough community input or public input in the project. So we're looking at establishing some community forums in the next few months, maybe 2 or 3 of them before November or October. I spoke to Steve Mark about it briefly, that we're really looking at having it in a gymnasium or cafeteria, so we hopefully can get 100 people or more. Put the information out there to everybody, get it for hopefully a convenient time for all, and have a quick little presentation, and then take Q&A for an hour or so, just so people feel like they have a voice in seeing this. So we'll work with you guys on putting a schedule together for the community forum. I know summer's coming up and that can be tough, but I think we should make the effort at least to put a few of them out there and meet with people and hopefully get some better input.
It's going to be very important.
Absolutely.
The next item is TTH budget and schedule update and CMIT risk process review.
Okay, let me see if I can get the screen shared here. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Can you enlarge it a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you enlarge it a bit?
Absolutely.
No.
Is that better?
Might be a little too large, but there you go.
Okay. So we are currently at the feasibility study agreement phase. We're monitoring, obviously, our numbers, the designer numbers, the architect numbers. The environment in site was the extra services numbers that we've been working through. And we did have other for any other things that will affect the project. So right now, as a total, for $1,085,000 was the project total. Right here, approved to date is $884,000. $20,000 left. The project will go through October. So I believe the coverage for ourselves and the architect, I believe we're good through October. What was mentioned earlier, we've spent about $120,000 in environmental and site. I'll get together with Studio G to make sure that all these numbers are correct and up to date. I believe they are. We've got the current 39 that was just approved tonight. We do have a slight change to one of the amendments that is going to reduce things slightly. I'll get that amendment out next week, that change. But it looks like if there's about $20,000 left here and another 10 left in here, not expecting any other additional services to hit these two numbers, then for the Chapter 34 study, I think we should be able to cover that. So everything is on budget as we speak, as we continue through to the balance of the feasibility study.
Great, thank you.
Sure. And now we have the schedule. So we are on schedule for everything at this point. We are at the point where we're getting ready for, we are going to be submitting the schematic design at the end of June. And we're going to go through the process of submitting to DESI prior to that, getting the notifications in and any responses or comments back from the MSBA. And we are still on track for shooting for the Board of Directors meeting in August. Once that gets approved, and at that point, we'll be establishing a project scope and budget agreement. So we'll have the finalized cost estimates at that point. We'll be working with the MSBA to put together an executed project funding agreement, and that's when it'll become crystal clear from the MSBA exactly how much they'll be reimbursing the project. It's a 3011 form that we put together that covers everything, contingencies, everything spelled out in that. So we go through that process with them for a couple of weeks. And then the town meeting, I believe that's the 28th, not the 27th, so we have to modify that. But then we go to special town meeting for approval on the 28th, and then that vote gets sent to the MSBA, and then that following Saturday, the 1st of November, is the vote. So everything is on schedule right now. I think we're looking good up until that point. We will be adding, as I talked about in a second, the CMR process and schedule will be adding to the overall schedule. Wanted to review it all with you first so we could, understand where we are, and we are right on schedule. Any questions about the schedule?
Mark, I just want to point out that next month's SBC meeting is when you'll be voting to submit the schematic design report to the MSBA. So I want to make sure you're aware that's happening and make sure we have a quorum.
Excellent. So on the 18th, we'll be looking for, well, that's right, because it's a week before it's due. Excellent. Okay, we'll add that to the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good point.
Okay, hearing no other questions. So it was approved and voted on a while back to go ahead with the construction manager at risk delivery process for the project. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of the process in order to do that. So we put together this quick little schedule and process breakdown of what it entails to go through the construction manager at risk. I sent you all something earlier today with this, and also the application that has to go to the Office of the Inspector General that has to be approved. It's about a 2-page application that we will work with you on, and Studio G will work with you on. It's just basic information about the overall project, a couple of signed documents, so it shouldn't take that long to process it. So tonight we're reviewing this. The application gets submitted to the Office of Inspector General hopefully next week by the 30th. The Office of Inspector General has 60 days to review it. In prior projects, they've pretty much taken 60 days to do that. So if we can get it to them around the 1st of June, end of May, we'll be seeing it by the end of July. While that's going on, we can certainly prepare the ad for the Central Register. We certainly won't put it in the Central Register yet, but during that time frame, we can prepare the RFP for the construction manager at risk services, which we will help you all on. The team will help you on. But once we get the okay from the Inspector General, then we're looking at submitting the ad somewhere around the 1st of September. Once that gets put in, it'll go probably about a month's process where we'll get statements of qualifications from them. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one section up here, no, item 2. Once we send this information out, the applications, we will need to put together a pre-qualification / selection committee. So that's a group of people from the committee that will review all of the CMs that will apply, and then obviously we'll be there to select them when we get through it. So then that brings us back to item 5, where we'll evaluate the statements that get submitted, and we'll pre-qualify at a minimum 3 CMR firms. Now, it could be more than that if we get an outpouring of firms and the committee decides to do more than 3. But typically it's 3 or more. 3 is a minimum. And so that'll be around October 1st. So then we'll receive those, we'll evaluate them, and we'll rank them based on the 3 that are chosen. Now that'll happen until the end of October, November, where we're around the vote. So none of that information is shared publicly. None of that information is out there until it'll be contingent on the vote. So the vote happens November 1st, obviously the 28th and the 1st. If all goes well, then we can interview the 3 firms. It'll be about a month. We'll set up interviews for the 3 firms or the number of firms that are selected, and then make an offer to the number 1 firm that's ranked. So that's the process that'll take us up through the vote. What happens after the vote is if we have a successful vote and we do the interviews, then there's a negotiation for a non-fee contract with the CM at risk that will assist, obviously, the town with putting that together. And then at that point, if there's a successful vote, the design team, the architect, and the project manager will submit a proposal to the town for the hopefully potential to continue with you on the project to the end of the project. So those will need to be negotiated as well. And then we'll all, if that works out in our favor, then we'll all work together and start working on the CM at risk contract and get the process started once design development starts. So a lot of information. Yeah, any questions, please?
Mark, does MSBA have any input into that CM at risk firm?
The MSBA has a whole process that we are following, but mostly it's the amendments that the MSBA have that we have to follow. So all that information will be included in all of this.
So, Mark, I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Number 1, item 5, evaluate the statement of qualifications. We have a month for that. Is there any benefit to reducing that time frame?
Yes, we certainly can. Yeah, we can. If we feel like it's down to 3 firms, we can evaluate that in 2 weeks. Absolutely.
I mean, it seems like a pretty long time. Given that I would have a month, I would look at it 2 days before the end of the deadline.
Okay, no, absolutely, Steve. We can absolutely modify that, and all of these things we can modify. The only one that's a hard change is the 60 days for the OIG. They pretty much take that time for. Even though I was on their website the other day, and they actually have a listing of all the projects that they're working with currently, and it's pretty light for CM at risk stuff, but. Typically, in my experience, they take that full 60 days to do it. So yeah, anytime that we get, that's why I'm thinking, get the RFP prepared, and there are some things in here like that we can reduce in time. So absolutely.
As far as item number 6 is concerned, the evaluation and ranking, who's going to prepare that score sheet?
We will work with you on that.
Okay.
Studio G and Turner Townsend here, we will work on that. We'll review it with you. We'll put it all together based on the previous projects and previous rankings before.
Okay. I've been involved in a lot of these, and sometimes the evaluation criteria is pretty weak.
We will certainly work with you on that to make sure it's exactly what you guys are looking for. I know you've done a couple of projects in town with a CM at risk. We can certainly look to that and see how that evaluation and ranking went. We've worked on many projects with CMs as Studio G has, so we can put all that information together and come up with a document that we're all very comfortable with for asking the questions and ranking.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions from anybody? Excellent, thank you.
Okay, the next item is public comment. I think.
So we have a guest with us this evening,
Yeah.
Sarah Ross from Undaunted K-12, who's been an incredible resource that I've looked to for a lot of things and went to a couple of their conferences and seminar. And Sarah, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. I had prepped Sarah a little bit beforehand with the information you guys were wanting. Basically, the process, they do have a geothermal option that they're going after for this project. So they'd like to just understand about the potential federal tax credits or what the process is to apply for that, et cetera, et cetera. So Sarah, please take it away.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the work you all are doing to shepherd this process. I'm not far from you. I'm out in Amherst. Just this week, we had our topping ceremony. So there with you all in spirit. And yeah, as Mark mentioned, I work a lot to help schools navigate this process of making use of energy tax credits. So I'm just going to share my screen there. Are you all seeing a slide deck here?
Yep.
Great. I'll get us started, and then I really want to, hear in depth some of the questions that you all have. We're a national nonprofit. We do work to help schools make healthy, climate smart choices. And we have extensive resources. For the last 2 years, we've been running a national campaign to help schools across the country take advantage of and become aware of these energy tax credits. So on our website, you will find voluminous materials, 2-page starter guides that can just help folks wrap their head around this, webinars that we did with the U.S. Department of Energy, celebrations and mentions of schools that have already been all the way through the process and gotten their cold hard cash from the IRS, like Seattle Public Schools that did 3 buildings in construction for geothermal and got $7.9 million back. So I encourage you to visit that website. There's lots there for you. I guess I'd love to hear kind of what do you all know right now about energy tax credits? What have you heard? Where are you in the kind of learning curve here? I've done 4-hour versions of this. I've done 7-minute versions of this. And I really want to make this time most useful to this group. So what do you guys know about energy tax credits and geothermal in the Massachusetts context? Maybe also.
Well, personally, I've been involved with the Krebs program for Massachusetts. We submitted, I think, 32 Krebs applications for UMass projects. I think the Krebs projects are kind of outdated by now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not even familiar with what that is. So these energy tax credits came about just a few years ago in the context of the Inflation Reduction Act. They are a topic of current conversation in Congress. I was up late last night watching, the reconciliation bill make its way through, so we can certainly talk about that. And that's a major asterisk on our conversation here today. I sent Mark a detailed page where we will kind of continue to update, and see how moves in Congress go. But these energy tax credits are pretty new. So just established in August of 2022, they take what has been a longstanding and effective policy in this country to support clean energy, and they expanded it and tweaked it so that schools and other non-taxable entities can take advantage of tax credits. So it turns a tax credit, which you all couldn't use as a non-taxable entity, into a cash reimbursement for certain clean energy technologies. So some of the keys here are these dollars are non-competitive. You're not competing with anyone else from this. You're not writing a grant. If you install eligible technologies like Geo, you get the money. It does come to you as a cash reimbursement. So the tax credit piece, kind of essentially looks like a rebate. And, based on current law, and here's the asterisks, these dollars are available until 2032 with no cap on the funding. So there's no max amount that you can claim. There's no annual appropriation that Congress needs to, approve every year. As many eligible clean energy machines that get installed by schools, by Walmarts, by universities, the IRS is on the hook to pay out these tax credits or cash reimbursements. Let me stop there.
Sarah,
Yeah.
Sarah, breaking news. I just got an email from Charles Goulding about an hour ago. He must have been up all night like you were, because he breaks down everything that's currently in the bill. And the first item for good news is that the geothermal heat pump credit is absolutely fully funded still through the end of the decade.
Yeah.
So to 2030. So, and that's construction has to start before that. Our building will be done hopefully in 2028, 2029.
Right.
So it's fully funded. So that's very good.
This is the current proposal from the House. We'll see what the Senate does. I'm glad you're in touch with Charles Goulding and Jake Goldman. I think very highly of them and probably talk to them on a weekly basis. So I think they're a great outfit, especially for geothermal work.
So, Sarah, can you kind of explain the tax credit portion of this thing? Because when I was involved in the Krebs, what was it? It was a state-funded tax credit program where people bought bonds. And is it the same thing? Same type of thing?
No, this is really, think of it as like a mail order rebate. This is really just like cash that is coming back to the town with no strings attached, as good as cash to you all, for installing eligible equipment. So when we think about schools, the eligible machines, I have up on the screen here, heat pumps and specifically ground source heat pumps. So air source heat pumps with a small asterisk don't qualify, but ground source heat pumps qualify. Solar energy qualifies. Thermal and energy storage, so batteries qualify. Electric vehicles, so these are buses, but also, if you have white fleet, so any other vehicles that the district owns would also qualify, and EV charging equipment also qualifies. Again, big asterisks on this. Republicans are looking to change a lot of this, and the House bill does do like not nice things to all the technologies except for ground source heat pumps, which still stay in very good shape.
Yeah.
So where does the term tax credit come in? What does that mean?
Well, so these tax credits for clean energy have been around for decades, and for corporate entities, for taxpayers, they are tax credits. So you have a tax liability, you claim a tax credit when you file your taxes, and that reduces, your amount of tax that you have to pay to the IRS. And so if you've been keeping up all year and paying your taxes, you end up getting, cash back from the IRS. For the years that we've had these tax credits, again, these were unused or could not be used by non-taxable entities. So what the Inflation Reduction Act did in August of 2022 is it said, well, this is silly. We want our non-tax payable entities to also be able to embrace clean energy. Let's turn those into a cash reimbursement for those entities that don't pay taxes. So through a mechanism called elective pay, they basically treat, if you're a non-taxable entity and you install one of these eligible machines, so you're generating a credit, they basically treat it like you've overpaid in your taxes. You owed zero taxes. You generated a credit by installing eligible machines. So you've overpaid in your taxes, and they issue you essentially a refund. That's kind of the mechanics of what's happening from the IRS perspective on you. So they will issue a check for the amount of the credit that you have earned by installing one of these eligible machines, putting it into service, any one of these 5.
Got it.
So these different technologies are governed by different credits. And so, as you're seeing news come out, or as you guys get deeper into this, you will see, one of the reasons why geothermal is kind of faring better is it's often its own credit, Section 48. Solar and energy storage are in Section 48E, that tax credit. And then these other 2 technologies on the transportation side have their own credits. And they're each governed by their own set of rules, just to make it more complicated. So the ground source heat pumps, again, based on current law, you would have to commence construction by January 1st, 2035. Plenty of runway for this project. Again, the current proposal pulls that into 2032. Still, you all would be in good shape. So as long as the Senate doesn't make things worse, you all would be in good shape here.
So Sarah, is there anything that we need to do prior to installation, or is this all after the fact?
Well, I'm glad you're talking with energy tax savers, because that's really the thing that you need to do beforehand, is have professional services that are help guiding you so you understand how the policy meets, where that policy rubber meets the road in terms of your projects. And so that you're setting up your bidding, your contracting, your contractors know, because there'll be important pieces that your contractors will have to help you comply with. So the school, as the owner the district, the town. I'm not sure exactly what the governance structure is in Littleton, but the owner of the school is going to be the one that is going to be claiming those credits and is going to be, carry the liability of any false claims on those filings with the IRS. So, it's up to you all to really make sure that you're communicating with your contractors. We're going after these energy tax credits. We're going to need your support because, as I can show you some artifacts from other school districts. What ends up happening is, from a contract administration point of view, you've got costs associated with this eligible technology. You've got costs for everything else. And you need to kind of segregate those costs so that you can say to the IRS, we spent X dollars on these eligible machines, right? And that's what we're claiming the credit on. And we played by the rules when we spent these X dollars on these eligible machines. So you really need to set up your contract. Your contractors need to set up contract administration to support that work. Yeah, Mary Lee.
So I thought I read somewhere. So we do all that, and that's something that can easily be done. But once it's installed and it's operating, then you have to send information to the IRS and show that it's working or whatever, and then they approve it. Yeah.
Let's skip ahead to the process. So, and then I'll take your question, Mary Lee. So yes, first you install, one of these eligible clean energy machines, in your case, ground source heat pumps. You place that equipment into service. The next step is for you to do a pre-filing registration with the IRS. They've built the portal. You go online, you identify yourself with your EIN, you click some buttons, and that kind of puts you on the radar of the IRS. You get a unique identifier is the kind of culmination of that process. So you get a unique identifier for your clean energy technology that you as a tax filer are going to claim a credit on. And then you complete actually your filing with the IRS. And I can show you a sample filing from another district in Nevada that I was just working with. You do that 4.5 months after the end of your fiscal year. So your fiscal year ends June 30th in Mass. So you're going to be filing by November 15th. And then the IRS is due to cut you a check within 45 days of that filing. I will say we have an asterisk on that. And, one of the things that we are concerned about is IRS staffing and their ability to make good on these payments. So I was just talking with another Massachusetts district earlier this week. They've been waiting a while for their check. They finally did get their check. They're announcing it to their board on June 5th. So can't say who it is. But they said, we got $220,000 worth of added interest on the check because it took so darn long for the IRS to cut us a check. So 45 days with an asterisk, and it's, picking interest if they take longer. Mary Lee, let me come back to you and get your question.
This was actually my question. Like, when is it installed, and then when do we get the money back? So thank you.
Yeah. So you're having to spend cash up front, right? Just like you're having to spend cash and the MSBA is reimbursing, you're spending cash up front. And then, you have to wait until you close out the process and do a filing. And so, a typical timeline, let's say you guys, get your ground source heat pump placed into service in time for school, this won't be your year, but, roll ahead a few years. Let's say you also do some EV charging equipment later on in your fiscal year. You're going to want to collect all the clean energy equipment that you put into service within a fiscal year. Do your pre-filing with the IRS at the end of your fiscal year when you know everything that you did that qualifies. The IRS wants you to do that about 120 days before the deadline. You'll get your unique identification number back from that pre-filing process and then, file what is called a 990T no later than November 15th, of that year. And then again, you're getting a check sometime in the next year, probably.
That's awesome.
How big a process is this? Is it an owner's process, or is it fairly straightforward?
Well, I think that's a good question for Charles Golding and Jacob and his team there. I think that it's a very different story whether you are under 1 megawatt or over 1 megawatt, the size of your clean energy property. So Mary Lee and others, I don't know if you know the kind of cooling capacity tonnage on this geosystem, whether you're over 284 tons or under 284 tons, but that makes a big difference in the answer to that question.
I do not know, but I can find out.
Yeah, outside of Charles, I think Gail's on the call too. Gail Sullivan has got a couple of connections too for people that have been through this process. I would strongly recommend to the committee that we probably engage one of these groups to help us get through this, and I'm sure it'll be a very, very minimal cost if there's any cost at all. But so we will certainly work with you on that to make sure that we have the correct information of what needs to be done, meet these timelines, et cetera, et cetera.
If it's a bigger system, so over 1 megawatt in size, and I don't know about the square footage, like something around 105,000 square feet is typically kind of the tipping points. I don't know how big this building is, Mary Lee, but that's, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
We're just under that. We're around 97,000.
Okay, so maybe you'll slide under. No, Amherst was we were at like 280 tons, and we're I think at 105,000 square feet. So that's, if you're under 1 megawatt, this is a much simpler process. If you are over 1 megawatt, you have to comply with domestic content. You have to comply with labor standards and have apprentices, and everything gets more complicated. So if you have options, you know, to spend more on your envelope to reduce the tonnage and make your life a little, you know, a lot easier, I would totally do that. So this is why, like, engaging these folks earlier can actually inform the design process in ways that both mitigate your risk around the tax credits and reduce the cost for your contractors and just to administer this part of the program.
Excellent.
That's great information.
Yeah, anybody, or you can continue, Sarah. We've got, you know, a little over 10 minutes left in the meeting. Does anybody else have any specific questions on the committee?
No, Sarah, will you share that slide deck with us?
I will happily share the slide deck, and I will also send over a few artifacts here. Are you all seeing a Town of Manchester report up on your screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, there are others that have gone before you. These folks worked with a different firm called CLA. And you'll see, it'll give you a sense of kind of what this reporting looks like. So basically they go through and look at every line item of spend. They say, is this in the cost basis or out of the cost basis? You get to figure out kind of what your cost basis is. For example, in Manchester, they did solar, what the cost basis is for the geothermal, by kind of parsing out these costs. And then they say, okay, for your ground source heat pump system, you know, we had a cost basis of 6.5 million. You qualified for the base credit of 30%. So we expect you to get, you know, 1.9 million back as a tax credit. You didn't go after the domestic content bonus. You're not in an energy community. So, you know, 1.965. And then similarly, they do a same analysis in the solar. You know, this is your cost basis for the solar, 868, 30% of that. Okay, you're going to get 260 back. So these artifacts will just kind of give you some sense of how all this comes together and what the considerations are.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Unless anybody else has any other questions, Sarah, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight. Thank you so very much for joining us. It's a lot of great information, and I'm sure you'll hear from me again, but we'll definitely go through this whole process. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Any other public comment on the screen, Stephen?
No.
Mark?
Nope. Nobody's got a hand raised.
Excellent. It's just about 10 minutes off, unless there's any other information or business. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second. We'll do a roll call vote. Jim,
Yes.
Michelle,
Michelle Kane, yes.
Sean,
Sean Ahern, yes.
maybe Sean Drat. Sean, was that affirmative?
Yes, Sean Ahern,
Okay.
yes.
Steve,
Stephen Nudi, yes.
Bob,
Bob Romley, yes.
Mike,
Mike Scaduto, yes.
and Steve Moore, yes. Next meeting is Wednesday, June 18th. And as Marilee noted, we're going to need a quorum for that meeting. Appreciate
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
participation.
Actually,
Voted.
Somebody else will need to host that meeting too. I'm not around that day.
Okay.
Actually, Steve, the next meeting, June 9th, with the
Yeah, sure. I was just going to mention
select
that.
board, school committee, finance committee.
Yeah. I'm not going to be able to make that. I have another medical procedure on my knee on the 2nd, so I'm going to have to defer that to Kelly.
Gonna be the golden knee.
Steve and Udi, just to be clear, we're being invited to a meeting from the select board, and the FinCom's being invited too. Like, it's like we're not generating an agenda. We're there to share information, correct?
Yeah, but if we're gonna have a quorum, we're gonna have to post.
Yeah, we'll still make sure the meeting gets posted.
But I mean, it's not our meeting. That's what I'm
No,
trying to
it's
get
a
at.
select board meeting.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I think typically we post it just to be safe.
Sure, absolutely.
Good idea.
Stephen, real quick, we can have a sidebar, but I think I'm joining the permanent municipal building committee as well. So if we could just connect on that as well at some point.
What was that, Sean? I didn't hear that.
Sorry, I'm joining the permanent municipal building committee as well. So
Yes.
just wanted to connect with you at some point as well about that.
Oh, yeah. I'll get your email address. We have a meeting on next Wednesday. I'll get you on that invite.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
if we
appreciate that.
if we could get all the information for the new people joining, specifically email addresses, so we're making
Yeah.
sure they're in all the correspondence as well.
That'd be great.
Look at that, 7:52. Love it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Have a
evening.
great night.